technical.
That's not too bad.
Thank you, everybody, for
All
your patience. Good. Okay, looks like most of us are here in person. We don't have anybody brand new. We've all met you, Marion, and everybody else we've met in the past. So let's just get started without introductions. And our next step will be to consider the May meeting minutes. Any additions, edits, changes?
You know what? Yeah, thank you.
They should have arrived,
Yes.
They did arrive, we have them.
Yeah.
on
Good.
the-
Any changes? I'm not hearing anyone offering changes. Move to approve. Tony? And seconded by Sue. All in favor of approving the May minutes? Great. And thank you so much, Rose.
Thank you, Rose.
Really,
Yeah.
really good. We really appreciate it. Great. Okay, so the first items on our agenda today are a bunch of reports from the program management team. And I just opened the agenda. So announcements first, just once again, I'm saying for everybody's benefit that the Dryden Rail Trails milk train got first break.
The milk train was really cool. I mean, that particular car and the caboose.
Through hours and hours, it's supposed to seem like painting glue on and.
Yeah. And it really paid off because I think they loved our commentary about bringing fresh milk since that was part of their theme. It was a great use of the theme. And we didn't quite have enough people because people were so divided in terms of obligations on that day, but we got volunteers at the last minute. It worked really,
And 3 kids.
really well. And 3 children.
I love the stroller with his cars.
Boy, to New York.
And they were so different because the other coal car kid, she was all over the place, but Celia, Ann's daughter, was the caboose. And Anne was handing out candy and stuff. And she said Celia's nervous and she wanted her close by, but she told her, I'll be handing out candy. You just followed the milk car. And she did. She followed the milk car. It was so cute. You can see the picture.
It was great.
It was,
Yeah, and the day was really great at the
It
booth
was.
too. We really did not talk to any detractors and everybody was thanking us.
It's
as
the
usual.
first time we had just positive a whole day.
Yes.
Not a single day, one kind of, but no one, that was great.
It was very good. And another quick announcement is that we were contacted by a representative of Evergreen Point. That's the development that's near the Fox Bridge. And they are a subsidiary of Pine Grove Realty, a much larger enterprise that has many different developments in Tompkins County and Western New York. And they were initially offering a sponsorship of an event. In Project Management Committee, Ray Berger suggested that we might also approach them for something for a larger contribution since they're quite a large enterprise. So that'll be one more.
And they sit right on the trail. right?
Yes.
And they're right on the trail.
Yeah.
Yes, so they'd
Big
like to
stone
sponsor.
point.
My first thought was that when we finish the bridge, we want to have a big hoopla, but
Maybe they could sponsor something big,
oh,
you know, give
Oh,
some
or
money.
give some money for that.
yes, we'll look again at, we'll get back to them.
But
And
yeah, they sponsored the hoopla for opening.
that would be great, but maybe we might even
Yeah,
retest
they could
more.
get their little name, they could get their name in very fine print,
The bottom line is something that goes by the time. I don't mind medium things. They're gonna give us money.
Yeah, I think we're restricted in what we can actually write on the bridge. Oh,
No,
there's
but a-
something
but a-
obscuring everybody's
but a,
view.
um,
Could somebody just click that out? AI companion is
that's
working with us. Good, thanks.
Um, They built a path from their condominiums down to the trail.
They, when I was on the planning board, they were very excited about being the trail. That was the advantage to them
Yeah,
having that
And it's a
property.
little asphalt path.
it's great. Yeah, so it's always nice when somebody approaches us, so that's a nice thing to announce at the very beginning. Okay, so under Private Tech Management Committee, Dan, do you want to recap what we learned about the Route 13 bridge bids and next steps, please?
Yeah, I think we have what is good news for this committee in this whole process. I know we were a little despondent about a month ago when we had 4 or 5 bids come in, and that was encouraging, a nice response. We had a nice low bid, and then there was a challenge to that low bid about whether it was a complete application or not. And the next bids up were substantially more money, more than we could afford. So about a month ago, we were all kind of uncomfortable, you might say, in the state of play and how we were going to make this project paid for without dipping into more taxpayer money, which I don't think we want to do. I want to give some credit to our consultant. I think Erdman Anthony is doing really good work for us, and I'll explain why in a moment. But I've been impressed and really glad we're working with these folks. So Paul Persetti is our contact there, as you all know, and he's been very diligent in looking into this situation. The bidders want this project. That's pretty darn clear. And there was a low bid that we would like to work with. However, their application, as you may recall, was incomplete. They were missing something called a Con R80 form, I believe, a particular form that was missing, even though the information that was in that form was supplied elsewhere in their application package. DOT was being a stickler about this form being omitted, and therefore creating an incomplete package, and one of the other bidders was challenging it on those grounds. There was also a DBE form, Disadvantaged Business Enterprise form, that was missing pursuant to new guidelines that had just been issued on May 1st. So it's kind of understandable that that form might have been missing. And so what Paul did, our consultant, was he realized that there was a similar situation in Region 5 of New York, in Buffalo, and brought that back to Region 3, which is our region, and say, hey, look, they had a bid process go sideways because of this missing form. And that process was given an extension. They didn't have to put it out back to bids. They allowed the bidder that had the missing form to complete their package. And that was allowed in Buffalo. Why can't we do that in our region? In our region, of course, it's Region 3, and they were like, and so they're right now considering that, and the ball's in their court, whether they allow us to accept an amended package from the low bidder, which is this company called Hurd Development out of Endwell, I believe. And Madison Hurd is very interested in working with us. In fact, he attended the town board meeting last week, just by Zoom, but he followed our meeting, the entire meeting, I might add, which takes a certain amount of stomach get through the entire thing. I wouldn't wish that on some of my enemies, but he stuck it out. And so it's kind of an interesting situation. I think it's a win-win for us. He either comes in with another package, and DOT allows that, or we rebid, and we'll rebid it, and it'll be a slightly we've taken some of the work out of the project, so we would expect a lower bid from the companies that bid before, and I would expect the low bidder to come in at a similar spot, if not lower, if we rebid it. So we're going to go one of two routes with this project, and I really would expect DOT to make a decision on this in the next week. I don't see why they have to sit on this very long. So I'm pretty pretty happy, much happier, I guess, than I was a month ago. And I think that's the feeling of the project management committee right now. Did I miss anything, Alice?
Excellent recap, Dan. That was a lot of detail you captured. Just one small clarification. When you said that we took scope out of the project, the scope was taken out of the bid.
Right.
If we were to rebid it, the work would still be done. It would be done by the town. And what Paul said was, if we go that route, and then the bid comes in and we can afford the scope that was taken out of the bid can go back in. So for example, the railings on either side was like $100,000 in our original design. And so we took the railings out of this future bid. If we were to, if that's what we have to do with DOT, then the bidders would bid on the bridge project minus the railings. And if the funds allowed, because the bids were low enough, we could then put the railing back in to have it be done by the contractors rather than the town. And there were some changes that sounded like cost savings regardless, that Paul Pursuti worked out with TG Miller, who had done some of the design work for us on the utility changes. And that changing some of the materials is going to save us some money, regardless of the bidding, it sounds like. So other than those small caveats, I thought you captured it all very well, Dan.
And
Thank you.
I'll just add that our hope is, Ray Berger has been prompting the DOT that we'd love to have a decision one way or the other by June 19th, this coming Thursday, because that's the next town board meeting. And if they said yes, we could go ahead and give the company another bit of time that the town board could go ahead and approve that. So we're hoping DOT takes that deadline seriously, and that we'll know within a week or so where we're going with this. Great. Any other questions for Dan about where we're at with the Route 13 bidding process? Good. And I'll just also add that we'll be doing, you know, when we know what we're doing, we'll be doing a press release to talk about where we are in the bidding process. The best would be if we were selecting, if we were able to say we're selecting the low bidder, but it also could possibly be that we have to send it out again, but we'll announce that one way or another. And when we do that, we will correct some misinformation that has been out there about debt service on this project.
Yes.
So we'll do it in the context of not responding to misinformation campaigns, but rather saying in a positive way, this is where we are. Looks like we've got a good prospect for a low bid to get this bill built. Good. Okay. If nothing else on the Route 13 bridge bids, let's go ahead and talk about the washout repair near the Fox Bridge.
Can I just interrupt and ask a question that I should know the answer to, but I'm not really sure. So Erdman Anthony, what are they doing for us? Are they just consulting us?
No,
Are
they're
they
the
doing bridge
they're the
design?
engineers of record for the
They
project, and they're the project managers, and they are doing all the compliance. And
So
you know.
did they design the bridge and
Yes.
the ramps, and then the PERD is just gonna actually do the construction?
yeah, so there's, if you remember, the design document package was 200 pages,
Yeah,
all kinds of details in it, right
Yeah.
down to like the wood railings would look like this, the bridge would look like, you know, whatever.
Okay.
Here's the grades. That was the meat of this, but there was like 3 other documents that all had to be submitted to DOT to be in compliance with the project. Or, you know, the grant requirements and federal law, and, you know, details like the wetland delineation, endangered species, They've done all of that. So then the day-to-day, making sure that the contractors are doing what's in the document is on them. And sometimes things don't go exactly as planned, somebody designed this thing and, you know, to move something here from there, and it's not where it's supposed to be, so what do? Unforeseen things. And then there's all kinds of compliance things, both with DOT and just like, is the cement the strength that it's supposed to be, and doing the testing of the materials. They're doing all of that.
So, I mean, yeah, they're kind of like, my dad was an architect, they're like the architect. They're overseeing the whole project, they're designing it, they're making sure it meets our specifications and that they're satisfying the needs of us, the client. It's just been like so long.
Yeah. Well,
10 years. We started on it 10 years ago, so. Yeah, no, we started.
Was when the Design Connect
We
study happened.
started on figuring out how to do things and having conversations with people like Fernando 10
Right,
years ago
yes.
to put this all together.
Yeah, and the task force 10-year anniversary will be this coming March, our first meeting, but there was work happening for months before that in 2015, so 10 years is fair. Yeah, and it's confusing because we not only have Erdman Anthony as the engineer for our bridge, but we've also decided to hire them to help us study alternatives for the next phase. So we'll be talking about that in a minute, but I think that's good to keep everybody remembering who the cast of characters are and what the rules. Good. So, but before we get to that, the other Erdman Anthony involvement, I thought we could talk briefly about the washout repair near Fox Bridge. And then it turned out that it's a little more complicated than I thought. So, Todd, do you want to start that one off?
Sure. While I do that, can you find the the legal survey recommendation from Ray that was in an attachment from a couple days ago? And we can share a screen.
What am I looking for?
So the legal description amendment recommendation that Ray put in an attachment that
Okay,
is a survey. So following up, this is a project with funds from the county, Parks and Trails, and we've extended it several years because we haven't completed it. And it was written to make improvements on the washout by the Fox Bridge and to resurface the Fox Bridge trail surface. So Allison, Rick Young, Chris Clausen, Deputy Supervisor, and us and me went out and looked at all of these. And Rick's on board for fixing the surface on the Fox Bridge.
They've already done some work.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
that's amazing.
Oh, good.
And so that was the easy one. And so then we go to the washout. And just as a bit of background, this is the area that was part of the whole series of failures that from the hurricane that then flooded and wrecked a bunch of trestles and culverts and blew them out, and the railroad never fixed any of them. So this one is on some pretty steep grade. And so the uphill side drop in elevation from one side of the 66-foot railroad right of way to the bottom is pretty significant. And Bruno was impatient when he was here and wanted to do things quick and easy and sometimes cheap. And so he went out there over a weekend with his bulldozer and just moved a bunch of earth around. And instead of fixing the washout, he cheated the trail upslope so that the amount of cut fill didn't have to be as much. So that if you're on the trail, you know, they're either straight or they're curvilinear, they never have a little swag in them. And this one has that in it, it's because of Bruno, not because of the railroad. So since then, because it was such a steep drops on either side and it wasn't properly vegetated, it's eroded more. And now the 10-foot wide trail is compromised kind of on both sides. And the amount of fill to fix it on the downhill side, on the Cornell/West/Fall Creek side, would be significant in terms of the elevation drop. So we were looking at it and we're like, well, it would really make a lot of sense if we could keep cheating it up slope and fix it that way. Given that we only have $5,000 and the amount of fill would be way beyond just that amount, not just the town's work. So we jumped down and wanted to make sure if the culvert was actually in good shape, did we have to fix the culvert? Was it breached? All these kinds of things. And we're like, well, we actually could fix a trail in a reasonable amount of fill if we could take the embankment, not the trail, but the embankment, and drop it down to the east end of the culvert. And Dan, you won't be able to see me, but I'll just show you.
We lost Dan.
I'm gonna try to,
Okay, so for everybody's benefit, here's the center line of where the trail or what the railroad used to be. So here's 33 feet on this side that we have from two owners, Stratton and Wawak, thank you. And then this is Cornell. And this shows the at the time of the survey, the approximate location of the washout. So it's even more than that now. So Bruno came in and did this with the trail, probably on outside of the easement a bit. We found that pin, it's still there. So long story short, the easiest solution for us is to go back to Stratton and Wawak and ask them for an additional easement amendments to build the trail infrastructure out to the end of the culvert. And that means that it's legal and we can do a more reasonably priced repair project.
Uphill east.
Yes, so the topography is up. What you can't see behind the apartment building there is Dryden Road.
Yeah.
So that's all going uphill. And just off the screen to the bottom left is where the Fox Bridge is. So that's the recommendation is to pursue, so Plan A recommendation is to pursue amendments to the easement. And then Ray said, you don't even really need to do a survey or any of those things, just describe, as he did on this, kind of from the existing, reference points, out so many feet, as an amendment. So it could be fairly straightforward.
How much erosion can you expect will continue, or are we gonna do something to prevent more erosion? Because it could continue up the hill, right?
It could, and that is another project that would require some additional funding, because we really should be at least doing something to arrest the failure, but the amount to arrest that failure versus what it would take to put the trail entirely in the right of way is kind of two separate orders of magnitude.
And that's something that could be, a future project to, align the trail more, back to the original trail, railroad bed. If we, wanted to at some point in the future, add fill, with appropriate funding and things like that.
It's like 40-foot drop off. It is.
The bridge.
Well, I mean, I'm just thinking.
Sounds like you need, like.
You get somebody like Belisario or somebody
Yeah.
who has, you just sort of
But there might be
dump
better,
tons of fill.
but there might be better use for that. I mean, I've always liked the idea of not having a straight shot. Little changes in the direction of the trail are interesting and
Yeah.
make the trail more fun.
They are, but when you're biking,
They're-
sometimes having a.
Fun for a bike too.
When you're.
The line of sight.
Line of sight is the issue,
That's true, yeah.
you know.
Well, we
Definitely.
can fix, the town of Dryden can fix that. DPW can improve line of sight issues if it is a safety issue. It's just, it's gonna be really expensive. Even keeping the trail from eroding from the vertical bank is gonna be a really expensive project. You know, knowing how much some of these things cost, we could throw like $50,000 or $100,000 in there if we were trying to make this a straight trail, and I don't think we want to use funds for that.
We like to build the whole trail first.
Yes.
Right, yeah, that's what I'm saying, is like complete the trail and then at some point in the future.
But it is a legitimate thing because there are parts of the west side that are vertical now. And we couldn't actually see the outlet of the culvert in the creek because some of that fell on top of the eroded away section above the culvert. So anyway, the DPW is waiting on us to make sure that they can actually legally do the construction for us to move forward. And we really don't want to ask the county for another extension. So if this doesn't work, if one of the landowners doesn't agree to amendment, we'll have to come up with something different. But we feel fairly confident that they will because they aren't really using any of this land as it is. And the Wallach is the one that has the large apartment building that built the amenities along the trail already. So we're cautiously optimistic that we'll get them to go.
They've been very trail positive. We need to remember that they said that when we do the stone dust, didn't want stone dust on the intersection.
They've done such a good job with grass.
Yeah, and talk to them about it, because maybe they'll change their mind, but not just do the stone dust and not talk to them, because they did.
Well, we
request
don't
it.
have a project for that right
Okay,
now,
okay, good.
so
this is.
When I saw the work on the bridge, I was afraid, oh, maybe we're gonna do stone dust now.
This is the washout right here. You can visibly see it's a
Oh, it's huge.
That's enormous.
very large.
What Chris is putting up a satellite view, that's not visible to you, Dan, but.
Is Dan on? I don't think,
Yes, he is,
He
yeah,
made
he's
it back
on, I
on?
can see
Okay.
him, but,
sorry.
we're
He's
not
seen,
seeing
he's
him
seen
in
this.
the
He looks.
display.
I'm here.
yeah,
Behind
here.
picture.
yeah.
He's in the.
But I think we
washout.
were looking at the same satellite display when we talked about this at project management, so
Yep.
that was helpful.
There
Thank
we
you,
go.
Chris. Good. Yeah, so Dan and I have agreed to approach the two property owners, and they've recently been in contact with our fiber optic folks. So our first step is to contact our fiber optic outreach person and talk to her about what's the lay of the land with these property owners. But as Todd said, we are optimistic that they support the trail, and this is quite remote from any of their development on their property. So it's really, they can to use this. So hopefully they'll just say fine. But Dan, you and I will need to get together, I think sometime this week, to talk about how exactly, whether we write to them first or make phone calls or whatever.
Right.
We'll work out a strategy for approaching them in the very near future, because if they would just sign off on this agreement and Rick Young could get in there with his crews to begin this work this summer, it would be a big plus for us.
Okay.
Any other questions about the,
Stratton has never had an access path from their building, which is right there. You see where it is.
yeah, they've never,
They've never, I wonder if if they would want one. So we can work on it.
The building was.
if they'd like to pay for it, it would be great.
It wouldn't take much. Like I say, the building's right there.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
just
they
feels
do
good.
have tables and, is that the
Well,
one?
that's
that's
the other
Yeah,
why we can, they have a step down to the trail and lights on the trail.
yeah,
So they're very trail focused.
Grills. There's some grilled
Yeah,
ones.
it's
One or
the
two
big
grilled.
business.
Yeah,
Never seen anybody there.
Right, right.
Yeah,
good, okay.
but their heart's in the right place. Even though their tenants don't seem, their tenants just bring their dogs out to poop.
Oh, that's another story. Okay, let's move on to phase 3 planning and the Erdman Anthony kickoff meeting that happened this morning. I just put project management members down for that. I could get it started and then folks could chime in who are at that meeting this morning. I thought we had a very productive meeting with Paul Prosciutti from Erdman Anthony and
Amy,
colleague Amy, who has done some work on the bridge and will be working with us on the phase 3 study. Todd, I thought you did a great job of talking about our goals for the study, and then we took a map and actually walked the consultants, the engineers, through each and every one of the properties in the section from Pinckney Road to Johnson Road. Do you want to just summarize some of the rubrics that we're asking them to consider as they help us look at alternatives?
yeah, so you might recall, we asked them to come up with 3 alternatives to help us plan the section from Pinckney Road to Johnson Road is their scope. And one of the alternatives would be on the rail bed, and 2 of the alternatives would be other routes, reasonable routes off the rail bed. We wanted them to minimize road usage in the other alternatives, minimize environmental impacts. There's a lot of wetlands there, stream crossings that would all be expensive. Going off the rail bed would require additional easements. And so you know, how many easements and what's the added length that it adds to the trail are part of the information that we wanted brought forward, that we kind of along with the range of costs in order to come up with some metrics to be able to compare the different alternatives. So, you know, you can imagine additional length of trail is not desirable, both from the economics, but also the number of additional easements that's required to go some other route. So how many easements does the other route involve? How much longer of a trail? How much are the expenses and environmental footprint? And the wetland cost isn't just in terms of like the negative environmental costs of the wetlands, but impact to the wetlands would likely require mitigation. Mitigation would need to then be factored into the costs and so on. So we asked them to kind of come up with all of those data points for that. And then, as Alice mentioned, we talked about some of the easements that we did have, and Tony, your map with all that information, we gave it to them, very helpful to give them kind of the lay of the land. And then we talked where we were with particular landowners in terms of the easement negotiations, as well as we gave them some preliminary information on some of the alternatives that we had discussed in the past about how we might work around particular sections where we didn't have easements. So that information has been kind of downloaded to them. I think they're kind of getting their heads wrapped around the project. They might have a few questions for us, and then we were going to have here in another few weeks, once they kind of put together some rough framework, we would have our next meeting and you know, see where they're at and provide feedback to them, and you know, are they going in the right direction with how they're approaching them.
Great. Any questions about where we're at with thinking
Or
about?
Diane or Dan or Chris, you guys were there, you could add.
I want to thank you, Todd, for handling the ArcGIS interactive portion of that, because it was very, very helpful to see the wetland layers and zoom in and click on property boundaries, and it was all just live and instant. I wish there was, wish we could do that like here, but
Well, I mean, some of the deliverables that we'll get from Urban Anthony will look like that.
Yeah.
They will see, they'll be like, here's this route
Yeah.
with this map and these impacts and this distance and this acreage.
So between the maps that you were able to do, the one that Tony provided, additional links that
Yeah.
Chris provided. We
We're-
had, I think that they appreciated that we have already drilled down to a certain level here, so they know what they are working with.
What happens if some negotiations actually come through in the middle of their work? Because that would change everything.
The only one that I think that could happen with is, well, I'll step back from what the statement I was about to make. We were reminded after this conversation that in the future, when we talk about individual properties, we need to go into executive session.
But just
So-
general. what would
General.
happen if-
So I will say generally, there are 4 property owners involved. And it's very unlikely that we would initiate any conversations with any of them before we find out from Urban Anthony the data that we would like to share with them. So I don't think it'll happen again.
Well, and remember, I mean, the alternative is coming up with a preferred alternative is one of the main deliverables. But really the top level goal here is that they give us a dollar amount
Yes.
that we then know how much to write future grants for. So, all things are subject to change, including prices of bridges, of projects that go on for 7 years. So, we will need to build in some contingency in all of these planning efforts that we're doing.
I would also think that if somebody came forward and said, I've had a change of heart. Yes, you may have an easement to my property, well, then we would just tell them,
No problem. Yeah.
we now have this easement, so don't consider any options that involve going around that easement, right? And which is,
Yeah, That's
make their work quicker.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And if they were a miracle.
Right.
That would be great. And I'll just remind us that, Todd, you prefaced the whole presentation to say the goal of all of this work is to have the data that we need, also to apply for the largest and final grant, TAP grant. And we don't know what their grant application cycle will be, but we're trying to line ourselves up so that we have the data that we need for that. And we haven't heard any word about the likelihood of an announcement of a TAP grant this summer or fall or whenever. So that's another factor, Dan, that I wasn't factoring in our subsequent conversation, but that if there were suddenly a TAP grant announced, say in August, it would be interesting. Because we won't quite have this project ready and other factors will come in.
I don't think we have to worry about that.
They're gonna be putting up money for that,
Okay, yeah. We hope they do sometime, but
They'd rather.
let us line up our
some
data
gas in our
first.
Cars.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, any other questions about phase 3 planning or comments? This one, I always say these should be quick and sometimes they aren't, but we are still working on getting reimbursed for the grant from New York State Parks and Recreation that was approved in December of 2017. Isn't it something? I had a talk on Friday afternoon with our finance director, Amanda Anderson, and she reminded me that we did in fact submit one batch of reimbursables, and we did get back $9,000 of the $185,000 that was approved as the state parks match for that same amount coming from the town. She has now since signed vouchers with a new batch number 2 of reimbursables. And as soon as that that she's received word that they have that. She's already started actually to prepare batch 3, which will be the last group. We're especially interested in knowing how much money we are going to get back on that grant, because it's possible that we'll get some money back that we could then apply to road surfacing in the Monkey Run to Route 13 section, and that can be a match against the TAP grant that we have for that section and the bridge. So she has just proposed on Friday that she'll be ready with batch number 3 to meet with me and Todd and perhaps 1 or 2 other folks to discuss with us alternatives for charging things like DPW staff and equipment time against that bid. There's some different ways of asking that for the state to consider the expenditures that we've already made from DPW. And she will work out alternatives, and she also thinks by the time she prepares that last request for reimbursement that she'll have a feeling for the kinds of things that they are approving. There's a couple of things that the signs are good. It looks like they are going to approve, at least they've asked clarifying questions about the cost of the crossing lights. And at one point, we didn't know whether they were going to improve crossing lights as part of expenditures for this grant. So fingers crossed that Albany tells our local folks, yeah, we're good to go. We'll send you the check for what you've used, and we can move on to stage 3, batch 3. So any comments or questions about the New York State Parks grant? Okay. The NYSEG section bridge. Yet another cool part of our project, I think. We are in a little stage of hiatus on that one. The work has been completed by the students that you've been hearing about for the last couple of months, and Charlie is away. This is the perfect time for us to send in our request for a grant for the difference between what the class could pay and what the total project is. So we've been working on the draft of a request to the Triad Foundation for $25,000. And I think I don't quite have the last version of the map that I need for that, but as soon as I get that, I think we've got a final version of the request letter and we can send it off. Thank you. I always have to be reminded that Pinckney Road has 2 ends in it.
Right.
But we'll get that map, and for those who are newer, they've given us 3 grants in the past and encouraged us to apply again when the need arises. So we're optimistic that we'll get the total 40,000, 25,000 from them and 15 from the class to get that completed. Any questions or comments on the NYSEG washout? Want to add anything?
Yeah, I'll just say the some of the timing for going back to providing another ask to them was we wanted to be able to have some tangible progress on the bridge, because they gave us funding for Monkey Run Road to Route 13. So we slipped in, all the updates on the other projects, the ones that we've completed with their funding, and the one that remains pending but is going to move forward soon, which was part of our whole strategy. We didn't want to be going back to the well with money that they've given us that we haven't used, without some reasonable way to communicate to them that it's moving forward. So that's in there, and Charlie, through his prior position at the Children's Museum, the Science Center, had worked with Triad very closely. And so I had Charlie give me feedback on the letter, and he did, which was helpful. So, and then the only other thing is that we have all of our submittals for the wetland permit into DEC and the Corps of Engineers. Charlie helped us on that. Ray helped us with that as well. And so they have a 90-day window in theory to get back to us on whether or not they want to claim jurisdictional responsibility for that area, and then if so, how are they going to work with us? But they've changed their regulations this past year, and so things are really kind of not easy to anticipate, like how they're gonna, how they're gonna approach us and what the process is gonna be.
One thing we can probably guess is that they will take the full 90 days that they have. Which kind of works because Charlie, as he told us, won't be back till mid-October. So if in the best of all possible worlds, we get that wetland permit and we get the funding, he comes back, his students move forward with that.
Batch of energetic students.
That's right, yeah. And so there'll be the spring semester students that will help our DPW guys do the final construction. Good. And near that NYSEG bridge section is the Bolt storage easement. And we don't have an easement. Glen Swan has given us an easement for half of the trail corridor that leads from Pinckney Road to the NYSEG section. And we, as we talked about last time, discovered that the storage folks on the other side of the corridor built a fence very close to the center line, right to the edge of their property, which violates the utility 33 feet. And they have sent us a letter saying, yes, we acknowledge that that was a mistake. So that's great. However, they said, we'll have a proposal for you within a week about the remedy, and it's been 4 weeks. So I am working with Ray to send a letter to them saying, we're eager to see your proposal. It happens that they've signaled that they wish to expand their operation there. So that's going to be an incentive to work with us. So to be continued. It's encouraging that they'll move the fence. That will allow us to get into with equipment in to build the trail, to surface the trail leading to the NYSEG property and up to the completed bridge without taking out some trees in the tree line on the Glen Swan side of the property.
Because we're allowed to use that, even if it's not an easement, right?
It's a utility easement, so
I mean,
DPW
yeah.
folks can, theoretically, they can use it for the purpose of going in for utility, but we're really seeking from the Bolt storage
Right.
guys that they give us an easement.
Doesn't they'll feel guilty enough after a while.
We hope, yeah, we hope, but it's
Yeah,
pretty clear to me that we're gonna have to keep pressing.
Did it affect Dryden Fiber putting their stuff down that it?
Yeah, the fence was there.
So did they go under the fence?
No, the fence is,
Happened after that.
the fence is about 5 or 6 feet off the center line. And so you can still drive a truck right down the historic top of the road there.
Yeah, actually, I don't know when it happened, whether it was before or after Dryden Fiber came through, but they were able to do their work without.
I think fiber came after.
Aha, yeah. Okay. Good. So, that, we covered a lot of ground in the project management committee meeting, and I want to move on to, the outreach and communication committee, and Diane.
So I'll be pretty quick in that I didn't order the signs because I thought. But also because we needed some information from Rick. It's will be getting back to us on that. We needed to know what was the space in between the holes and whether we wanted to throw. So it seems like it's an information. And we talked a little bit about a banner. It might be worthwhile to have another larger, brighter banner that we can use in tents. Very.
Yeah.
We can look into a price on it.
Yeah, we used the old gold banner that says Friends of the Dryden Rail Trail as kind of a last minute workaround. But Chris and Diane rightly pointed out that for some people, that Friends of is still associated with the website that Bruno Schickle created, which then
But you don't want anybody ever Googling Friends of the Dryden Rail Trail.
First
Hey.
thing that comes up is the Facebook page that's right back.
We have not been successful in getting that Facebook page down because we have no justification to do so.
yeah, so we know we don't want to use Friends
Can
of.
that banner be modified, like turned down, because that Friends of is in small print just above.
Yeah.
Right, rail trail.
I think we could paint over it.
If you turn it down. It's gonna look like, I mean.
I think we
anybody's
could
gonna
paint
read
over it though. I think we
Yeah.
could paint over it in yellow and it would just say Dryden Rail Trail and it would work just fine.
Let's just
And-
make
and
it
it
into a railroad that then morphs into a trail and.
Tattoo cover.
Yeah.
Interested in branding, it is not our brand. It does
Right.
not say who we are. It doesn't look like anything else we do. So it doesn't lend that authority that this is an
Yeah.
official thing on the Dryden Rail Trail. It looks like some hacked thing, especially if you start.
We're only thinking about carrying it in the parade. That's the only.
I think we're watching the parade.
Well, like before I post the pictures, I want to get in there and.
Photoshop it.
I posted them yesterday, but I don't want to post them until I post. Today.
Photoshop them.
Yeah.
With yellow paint.
But yeah, I think we should post out in the banner. Yes, and let's do that.
Diana, when you cross that out, I noticed that a lot of the banners, they have like loops at the top and they have like a little PVC pipe. So that two people carrying it doesn't sag in the middle and it's rigid, but then you want that pipe to come out, like if we're tabling.
But you know, if you did have something like that, it might be really handy, even putting it on a table.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's true.
Or you just hang it over or a
Yeah.
tent or something, so that's really. good,
Something
yeah.
rigid, yeah.
With the current pop-up tent that we have, the beautiful, most recent banner that you created is a head bunker. It doesn't sit high enough for us to then put the banner across the front. So,
Better across the table would be.
it'd be better
More on
across the table.
banner, yeah, that
Yeah.
it was meant to be, I think it had been.
Yeah, okay. Good. All these.
But that was quick, I reclaimed your
What?
I gave you back some time.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we took a lot of time on that earlier committee. Good. I haven't really thought too much about the trail stewards and the volunteers committee, so can we just check in on where we are with it?
Nothing has happened. We've been kind of swamped with personal things and work and a lot of, well, struggling a lot.
We had
So
a couple of people come up to us at Dryden Dairy Day saying, we want to do something.
that's great.
Yeah.
So we told them it was coming.
Yeah.
Well, she could have done
And can I-
we again.
Can I offer to connect with them? I'd like to get that guy's email. I got it and gave it to you,
I
but
have it in my purse, yeah.
I'd like to connect with them and just a quick question, maybe I can start doing like communications and liaisons with groups like that. This is a young man approached us and he said he and his wife, they have kind of a group of friends, they're kind of young professionals. And they live down by Purvis Road, but they love the trail and they'd love to do like a cleanup party down by their section or any section instead. But they didn't want to overstep, so they were looking for some guidance from us about. And I thought, and I said, yeah, put your email down. He goes, yeah, I did that a long time ago and no one got back to me. It was like,
Oh, for us?
yeah.
Oh.
That's why I made a point of
Last year at
introducing.
Dryden Dairy. And
So I thought, why don't I'll get back to him.
Great.
I'll talk with them, and maybe I'll volunteer to come to either do a walkthrough with them or
Great.
come to their cleanup party. And then I was wondering for stewards, like, could we have a group, instead of like an individual being steward, can we have like like a group being steward? I think that's better, right? More
Yeah.
people involved.
They can actually do it in a party style.
Yeah,
Do.
yeah, and then there's just more people.
Yeah.
That's cool, yeah,
Doing
that's
it
him.
together, it's so much fun.
I also,
Interested in when we put up their emails, do we ask them to write down their question or what they're interested?
We
in?
only
are saying sign here if you'd like to have updates.
Because maybe all that we think we do with it is just put them on the mail list. Maybe we
Well,
realize-
And
we
actually,
don't
that's
put much out. on the
something
mailing list, so,
well-
that's.
so another
We did here, yeah.
thing that changed about 2 to 3 years ago is that Google groups changed the way in which you can manage membership. And you can only direct add Gmail addresses. You can no longer
Right.
direct add non-Gmail addresses.
Yes,
So you have to send an invitation to them, but those invitations often just disappear.
that's
They go
exactly
into
what
junk mail,
happens.
just so it may be that you did send them in an
Yeah.
invite
And it disappeared.
and it disappeared.
Yeah, that's what, I'll just add, Chris, that Gwen Beck has been looking for ways to be able to help.
Mhm.
And I suggested that she manage our listserv. So she now has the long list of people who
To sign up.
signed up at Dairy Day and she will go
She'll
ahead
try
and
to,
add
like,
those. And
action.
she and I sent invitations when I was showing her how to manage it. But I did not know at that time that they disappeared. And I've asked her since, did we hear back from those 3 people with non-Gmail addresses? And there's no mechanism really. They did not come back
Yeah.
to us.
Yeah,
I don't
there's
know what to
no,
think
there's no
about that.
feedback because Google wants you to subscribe to their big, I can't even remember the name of their big platform for.
So many.
The evil
people have-
empire,
Yeah.
is what it's called.
So many people have Cornell.
Yeah,
.edu
exactly.
ones and those we
It's always-
were unable to
Yeah.
add in this new
Do you think
climate.
it's possible to get a Cornell listserv address for this? Since it's a mailing
I
list?
think this is apolitical, so that is possible that I might be able to set up a Cornell e-list, but even
Because
that's not
Theirs is going away.
immune to.
But another one to manage is.
But I mean, it's not immune to problems where sometimes messages go into, junk mail and things like that. It's-
Could we maybe have a look, like a little separate caucus offline of this
Yeah.
big group to talk about our Google
Yeah.
listserv, and we'll bring Gwen in and we'll try to really think about how to handle this issue of not being able to add people.
Also, how to keep a constant communication with the group, because we haven't been talking to them much.
No, I
And
mean,
we
and
could have,
that's,
we had all of our science things we could have done.
Yeah.
So.
A lot of people, when they ask, when we say, if you'd like to hear updates, they say, just how many emails should I?
Yeah.
Not too many.
Not too many. I said, it's probably 2 a month is gonna be the max. that you're gonna have. Oh, no, we, our agenda and minutes, always the
Oh,
announcement, and the agenda is chock full of progress
Yes.
reports. So they, the people, and
True.
actually one young man who, Jim Miner, used to come with us come to all of our meetings, for those of you who remember from the early days, and he said, I wish you'd
Move it to Monday.
move those meetings from Monday to Wednesday, because I can never come, and then I don't get the minutes till a month after it's happened. So, Rose and I said, we'll work on getting those minutes, sooner, but
But it was approved.
I don't think we're gonna, we've been meeting now for almost 10 years on Monday night, so I don't think that's
I
gonna
mean, I think
change.
it's great that we have the minutes we do.
Yeah, yeah.
So Sue, just back to the first.
Oh, thank you.
All of it, which is great, and Dryden, town of Dryden owns, so it's different, owns the 66 feet from Purvis Road, well, Lake Road. All the way up to the village boundary. So it's quite different than our other parts of the trail.
Okay.
And so sometimes there's large things there that people can't get out, and we can get the DPW to help. And if there's things that are, because I have seen this, because we, the Botanic Gardens, have a half a mile of the trail from East Lake to whatever the next road is, or not actually all the way to the next road, but at least a half a mile from East Lake going back towards Dragon Lake. And sometimes some of the debris is outside of the 66 feet. Because the wetlands in there and the water carries them and so on. So if people are interested in a cleanup that goes beyond the trail, but is visible from the trail, then I can work with you on helping to get landowner permission for some of those. Because we've had people go in there, drive down the trail, however far, and just throw shit into the ditch, into the wetlands.
Okay,
Tires, you know,
wow,
chairs, whatever.
okay, wow.
So these guys might not be up for it, but you never know, so. that's why I
Young
mentioned it.
professionals.
Yes, young professionals.
Yeah, he's pretty fit.
So you're talking just about trash, you're not talking about spring cleanup of fallen branches and stuff.
No,
No,
Right,
most of the
okay.
trash
I just
pickup
wanted-
was what he and his wife just volunteered to, he and his spouse just volunteered to do a little pickup along part of the trail last year, he said. And then he belongs to this group and he thought it would be a great outing for them and a service that they could do.
I suggested invasive species removal too. We could work with them on some.
Well, I mean, that I think is something that could be done with training.
Yes.
But just with the trail stewards augment what the DPW does. So Rick did tell me that most weeks, the DPW goes once a week and drives the length of the trail.
Really?
So that if they, you know, if there's a big tree that falls across, you know, whatever, they would come across it if one of our volunteers doesn't see it, you know. But if they do see it, then we can have this be where they help us inform the DPW, hey, there's a tree down. Or if it's little stuff, then they can do it themselves. So it doesn't have to be limited just to.
I think we really do need to, you guys have been working on a beautiful way of recruiting people visually. And we have to really work on the next step, which is supporting those folks and
Yes.
keeping up communication with those
Exactly.
folks. And I know, Sue, you are willing to
Yeah.
take on some of that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. So if there would be a meeting, so in my head, the people that have said that they'd be willing to work on this are Chris, Tony, Steve Winans, and Sue. And if there would, and Chet, I'm sorry, let me get you right on my list right here, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for that volunteer link to pop up somewhere. Throw my name on it, yeah.
Yeah. And it seems like maybe a quick Zoom with all of you guys with a kind of who's doing what kind of thing. Are we ready to get the recruiting thing out? What will be our message to folks? Should we have a kickoff meeting with the people who have stepped forward after a period of time? Those kinds of questions. Would you like me to join you for such a meeting in the next month or so we can?
Do you have a time that? Are you
Is there
available?
any spot,
You look like-
Chris?
like, no.
Just disclose, Diane and I are in the process of listing a house for sale. And everything that goes along with preparing the house to make sure that it's ready to be listed. There's a lot of steps that we're trying to check off all the appropriate boxes. And I think that along with other volunteer activities and work obligations, this spring has been a bit overwhelming. So I don't want to say that there's a legitimate reason why I think some balls have been dropping, but I want to, be able to move forward with this. And I think it probably is gonna sort of fall on Diane, and me to just get the post up on the town of
We could try to set a goal to get something going by
just
early July or mid-July.
Yeah.
That's reasonable,
I
okay.
mean, it's just a matter of creating the
Yeah.
post, then polishing it off. Make sure that the PDF, supporting PDF is ready.
Good, but I think, we have these other volunteers who are willing to.
Yeah,
start
if you need us to
the
help. with
Next
those
steps as
tasks,
well.
you know?
Yeah, the supporting the volunteers piece, and so, yeah.
I like the idea of thinking holistically and seeing how some of these things can be delegated and how they're coordinated. It seems like that would be very useful process wise. So that when people start rolling in and they have questions, whoever is available can answer them, because everybody's.
Well, that's the goal of the kickoff was to be able to put this message out there, and then having that email address, the go-to email address that then would feed into, and anybody who's volunteering to support that and answering and responding to messages, all of us would be able to receive those messages, which is what that having a Gmail address, and it's like a list and all this stuff working seamlessly. I'm concerned about Google.
Yeah.
Working
That's a
seamless.
technical thing,
Yeah.
to answering some questions, having this meeting, to answer some questions like, are we gonna get everyone together to have a meeting face to face when we have a group?
Are you gonna onboard the entirety of the freshman steward group, or are you gonna do a bunch of individual one-offs?
We gotta make these decisions now, and we'll be ready to answer questions, and so it sounds like this meeting would be a great idea.
Yeah.
To get.
Yeah, and it sounds like you're willing to, because we've had some people step forward already to just say, I'd like to do some steward work, you're willing to help us in the interim, at least say, yes, we're following up with you. And
Yeah.
They were, this young man was interested in any spot. If he
Yeah.
had done work in the SHUD section, but his group are mostly Cornell based from young professionals, and so they really could. They could choose any section. So it's kind of up to us to say, well, what's the section that needs the most help? And I'll just say real quickly that we had another conversation. The Dairy Day conversations are quite helpful in certain ways. We had another conversation with a property owner who gave us an easement near the village of Freeville, and she was saying, oh gosh, if you're talking about trail stewards, I've got poop bags on my property, on the trail next to my property, and so on. We could use some more signage to say, I said, oh, we're working on signage about cleaning up after your dog.
Yeah, there's quite a few of them there. And just as an aside to that, I know all the kiosks have like the poop bags.
Yes.
So somebody refill those, because I know the one at George is empty and there was a giant trash bag hanging there, but somebody came and collected it.
Oh,
So,
Stephanie Goddard from the village of Dry.
okay, I'll talk to Stephanie.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I know her.
Yeah.
But, yeah, she installed that, she paid for installing a poop bag dispenser. But what's happening apparently is that some users are taking those bags and then not disposing of them.
Oh,
properly.
yeah, they
Just drop.
put the poop in and they just drop them at the side of the trail.
Yeah, just, okay. But
I don't know if the intention is like, oh, I'll catch it on the way back and then they forget, but yeah,
You know,
I grab them all the
That
time.
would be almost every dog walker.
Yeah, I grab them all the
Yeah.
time. And I would almost rather them just have the dog poop off to the side of the trail rather than put it in a bag and leave it back.
absolutely, it's much less.
Right, and I mean, some of them are like, I'm like, oh, there's a pink one in the tree there, like, it's like obnoxious.
Yeah,
No.
yeah, it's really, it's
Well, because the
crazy.
thing is
But it
biodegradable.
is,
Yeah.
I mean, when
In
you're
10
thinking
years,
about
Right,
sending people out, wear your sanitary gloves if you choose that area to do the cleanup, but those are the kinds of things that people can talk about and come back to us. Where do we need
Yeah.
more
I
signs?
wouldn't expect anybody to pick up bags. So
Yeah.
if I know we're kind of going
Yeah.
down in a like by hand. So we have the
grab
grippers.
peppers, yeah.
So if this is something that we want people to agree, they're like, I will do this. We should be buying the grabbers,
Okay,
and then
what do we tell
they
them to
can,
do with them? What do you tell them to do with them?
then you put it in a bag
Yeah.
that you're carrying with
Right.
you, and then you dispose of it. But that way
How
you're
do you
not,
dispose of them? You put it in your own trash, is that?
That's what I do, yeah.
yeah,
but that way you're not asking people to pick it up with their hand or even with a glove,
Even with a
or
glove,
whatever. And so that is, I mean, they're only like $10 each, so
Yeah.
we could
Divide those.
give you,
Is that-
the one that picks up the most, we can paint theirs gold.
Yeah.
You know?
We don't want to discourage people from being students if that becomes. a
Right,
kind
it's
of
optional,
crime.
it's optional. for them
It's
to do
not,
that.
but if you, if
said
you
that.
wanted to do that, we'll supply you with a sanitary way to do that.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
good, okay.
So we have gripper, if I talk to this guy, we have grippers available now? We
No.
don't yet. Oh, we don't
No,
yet.
we'd have to
Okay.
source.
Okay. And just real quick, a question that came down my head when you talked about people driving down the trail to unload debris. I'm assuming we don't want volunteer groups picking up trash driving on the trail, right? Because it kind of sets a bad precedent.
Right, I
We're
mean.
not a DPW vehicle and that looks.
Exactly, all the, it says no motor vehicles on all the places.
Right.
If we had something that was coordinated and it was official, like a one-off, we could probably do that, but we don't wanna have it be like on a random basis, whatever. We
Right.
don't know.
I mean, I still run into the DPW trucks all the time, and they surprise the hell out of me.
But it's different to have a personal vehicle, so I'll make sure to discourage that.
One
Yeah.
thing I made a while back, and I made one for Bob, and we have one, I don't know if anybody else has one, I made this sign that says like official vehicle from rail trail with your license plate number. And that way, if you park like near the trail,
Oh, what a nice thing.
it makes it like, and this came about because we were parked.
You're like a ranger then or something,
You
yeah.
know, you put in your window, sort of like, this is an authorized vehicle and they can park in this place that we don't want anybody else to park in. Because we used to park by the section of the trail that comes into 366. And somebody once left a really nasty note on our dashboard or our window saying like, was it, remember, like,
Yeah, they said,
this
this
is.
is, you're not allowed to do any deer hunting in this area, you shouldn't be here deer hunting,
Yeah.
you know,
Oh.
we're like. "Why we're not deer hunting, what are you doing?" And
If you're on official rail trail business and you're parking at the, you know, off Route 13, on there where the trail goes in, then maybe if there's a way we just kind of, you know, if somebody needs an official sign for their car. just-
Call Diane, I think that's
Call
what, you
Diane.
have the template for it and you
Yeah.
could just, okay, thank you, that's great.
And I can send a PDF and people can either print it out at home or they can. Or you have to keep those and have.
So-
Magnets.
I had is, what about, before we move off this, and I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I wonder if some of you guys could begin thinking about some of the next step questions. I mean, you've just done the heavy lifting on all the organization for setting up, you know, groups and having beautiful recruitment materials, but you guys have trail experience and could maybe meet separately to say what would be
Yeah,
next steps
Yeah.
that
We
we
need to get the ducks in a row.
Yeah.
For what, when people stop volunteering.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. You guys you don't have to be involved in that till you're ready to come back together again and you've begun to create some protocols.
Yeah, we can draft it and then when you guys are ready, you can go over it. That sounds good.
Yay. Good, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you.
I just
Yeah.
real quick, but the other guy that was at the parade thing, I don't even know if it's a male or female, but there was someone who was talking about the Underground Railroad overlapping with the.
Yeah, I talked to that guy.
You did, okay.
Yeah, I think he said there was a form, it's now a defunct Human Rights Council or something.
Yes.
In Ithaca, and he was involved with that, and he knew that there were Underground Railroad houses along Lower Creek Road. He didn't actually know the road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a sign there. too.
Yeah, he was, thinking that it would be nice to kind of coordinate and maybe he had the idea of maybe putting little signs that said this way for Underground Railroad houses, but it is a little further, it's off the trail, so I pointed that out, but he was interested and I think he was gonna talk with the people he knew. So
we could, I think
They're associated with the
Yeah, I was
railroad.
thinking that.
Yeah, that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be a concept for the new rail trail in addition to there being a station.
And the kiosk would,
So-
the idea that the kiosk will have information on where to go, like related to the trail, yeah.
Our temporary workaround for Etna, when the bridge is done, is to go from Pinckney Road on Lower Creek back up to Three Bills.
So it could take us a long summer.
That's for that interim.
Yeah.
So we'll keep that in mind for the kiosks.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Good.
that,
So that's
the
the- that's the
gentleman's
Current
name is,
temporary option.
it's
Yeah,
highlighted on the.
cause on a bike,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's the way I went through there now.
When is it?
Gwen
Okay.
has it now.
So
yeah.
his name is.
I saw that and you wrote on.
And a note, there's a
Yeah.
note on it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I saw that. Okay, well,
And
hang
this
on.
meeting was, even the attendance at the Dairy Day was probably a little less than last year. The interaction with us, I would say, was greater, and I think that list was twice as long as we got last year.
Yeah, yeah.
So.
But other booths were thinning out and we were still having lots of people coming with questions and we loved the trail and somebody that works with you in Botanic Gardens, a young woman came over. I can't wait for the bridge. The Banner told me about it.
This is
Oh, can I, I'll just take a minute to make a little plug. The neighbor in Freeville who had the problem with the dog walkers leaving all the poop bags is Leah Ellisef. And she is an artist and she's having on Friday from 5 to 8:30 at her Sky Factory Art Space on Factory Road. She's having a little showing and she's inviting people, so really nice woman. She loves the trail and she actually talked with me that she was kind of interested in maybe putting little cabins up on that hillside. And, you know, she just loves the fact that the trail is there, but you know, it is a little frustrating with all the poop bags because that's where everybody walks their dogs. But, that's just my.
That might have been listed.
Never look at the back of her.
Okay, once again, we're getting close to the time that we report to end our meetings and I wanna really try to keep us to 9 minutes.
The blue building at the end of the road there.
Actually, three things to deal with, not just am I next?
Yes, Judy, yeah. That's what, I'm making a little space for you to come in right now.
Yeah, Alice suggested, I'm gonna talk first about this mini forest,
Yes.
possibility and also some things about, oh, I'm just getting a cramp. Rail trail, I mean, yeah, I really am getting a bad cramp in my leg. The benches.
Oh, good, okay, good.
So, Alice suggested that, she and Marion and I form a new committee. We might call it mini reforestation committee, at least for the moment, but, I think we talked about it a little bit last time. It would entail choosing various spots along the trail and making a complete small natural habitat using native plants, preparing the site by getting the non-native invasives out in some way or another. So we actually visited one section on May 23rd, which is between it's a little bit to the west of Pinckney Road, where the Saunders concrete was. I don't know who owns that now. Saunders, huh?
Heidelberg aggregate.
Heidelberg, thank you, aggregate. I need to add that into my little report. They initially requested site screening from their buildings and their parking lot.
In the easement, it's in the easement. It's not just a request.
Absolutely, it's in the easement. So we are obliged actually to do some screening, so we're combining the idea of screening with the native restoration. So we visited the site, walked along and chose an area that looks right into their parking lot and at their buildings where the which doesn't seem to be too badly infested with invasives. In fact, there may be still some quite nice natives in there. Alice took some pictures. Are you able to? Do people want to see them or?
They're not too, it was a very gray, rainy day. We
Surprised.
So they're
Well,
not,
I sent them to you.
yeah, I've got them. I'm calling them up right now.
Oh, okay.
Uh,
Screening, we're talking about green screening, right? No.
Yeah.
Visible.
There's a process or there's an organization and a set of principles called Miyawaki process or method, which is gaining popularity. There's a conference on it in July that people may be interested in. I think Marion and I and maybe Alice are going to go. And I've met a few other people in town at Eco Village in particular who are doing pocket gardens, somebody named Pat Evans. So I think there are a lot of people, a lot of sources to draw on, and we'll probably follow these principles. But I think that just starting with one section, where we've already agreed to do it. The area is not too brushy and weedy that we can't convert it without too much. It'll be a lot of trouble, but without an impenetrable mass of honeysuckle and multiflora rose to get rid of. And the area is quite accessible to work. And there's also a little swampy area there too, so there could be some variation in the kinds of habitat that we're actually creating. Marion does have some experience with this. I think right now she's drawing up a list of steps in the process that we will have to go through. And we will need to learn how to design the site and choose the plants. I have right now some access to free red buds. If somebody has red buds growing all over, I think we can probably source some of them our own.
I thought red buds weren't native.
They're not native to.
They're not native to
New York.
New York. With climate change, it's what we need. We have to decide what we mean by native.
Yeah, exactly.
Do we have a definition of screening? Or what
That's a
was
good
promised in the easement? It's like, is it supposed to be like a basically
That's a
no
good
peek
question.
throughs on their property?
I don't, I would have to
Year-round
check
versus
back. I
summer.
don't recall that it's that detailed. The ownership has changed, so expectations around what was in the easement to begin with and what they would want now, or even if they care. I think from a trail user perspective, we want to screen this regardless of what.
Yeah, now you can see some of the
Regardless
pictures
of
of
what's.
rather
in
the ugly
Yeah,
building.
you can see their backup shop.
And that's the height of it now.
So Bob and I looked at this a year ago, because we were actually gonna get something started towards this. When we were working with Rick and they were doing the Pinckney section here. And essentially the between what the railroad did and what the aggregate factory did, there's no original land, soil, or vegetation in this section. So you're working in completely disturbed sites, which are mostly gravel. Which is like a really like one of the most difficult things to plant into.
It drains right away.
It's gonna, yeah, so maintaining the trees is gonna be
That
hard.
may be why there's so little there now.
That's why there isn't anything growing right now. So my recommendation was red cedar,
Oh,
and that's like
that's.
principally 95%. I mean, you could put some in the swale,
Okay,
but they wouldn't, the things that go up on the top of the berm would be the things that would be the most
yeah,
screening, most bang for your buck.
Yeah.
Which is more of a functional restoration, not a
yeah,
natural restoration, if you will.
Yeah.
But it also means that they're gonna grow really slow because it's almost like
these people
And
may
that's it.
not have quite the. I mean, the company that's there now may not have quite the insistence that they be screened,
Right,
but if we put some attractive things that can survive that are low growing nearer the trail and that can grow a little faster or that can reseed themselves, it might, you know, that might serve, but one of my next comments was that we need to consult people who know what will grow there and what kinds of plants
Yeah,
we
it's-
should be considering.
it's a
And
hard site.
You're actually the first person I wanted to ask.
it's a hard site. so.
Okay, well, that'll be a challenge. But beyond this, I was thinking that next, in the future, individuals might want to donate to have a particular area reforested with this, this method, and they would not only donate the money to have it done with help, but also then be partly responsible for learning about it, for helping to plant, and then for watering and upkeep to keep these things alive until they get established. So it's kind of a long-term commitment, but I think that's the kind of, if I were going to donate, I would think this is something I would like to do, because I get really disturbed by the honeysuckle.
Yeah. The one spot that we found, for some reason, the spot that just is along the side of the back part of the actual factory doesn't have such high growth on it. So that was the spot that we picked, because at least we could get in there more easily. And there were about 200 feet along that back, the back of the buildings that we were thinking about targeting. But it's great to know that you went with Bob, and that it's such gravelly soil that it'll really restrict what will be able to live there. So Marion, I wonder, would starting with red cedar as kind of a base plant be a good start for developing the planting list? And
let's look.
It's also not a favorite one for deer.
Okay, yeah, that's
a good thing.
That helps.
Okay,
So
good.
this is
So
Hanson aggregate.
there are some native species growing there, so we
Yes.
know they can survive.
Yes.
We can do a little
Yes.
survey and see what's on there.
In terms of,
dogwood.
well, wait
Yes.
until we get to we're all in one conversation, and then I want to just ask one more question.
Sorry.
So that's okay. I think one of the reasons why you were out there with Bob a year or so ago was that we actually, when I went and looked at the triad request letters, the letter that we wrote asking for help with the Hallwood surfacing section also included a request to do this work. Now, we've already completed that work and have gotten credit for it, but we ran out of funding we used up the full 5,000 that we got from the County Parks and Trails for the surfacing part, and we didn't get to to this kind of work. So at the moment, there's no budget we don't have any funds to do this yet. So
That you do.
so that's part of our challenge, to identify a planting list and then identify some potential donors.
Identifying the planting list, remember that the original.
Massive pile of
study
concrete
report
rubble they got back there.
did
Yes.
have a set recommendation.
Right. For Design Connect, if you'll recall, back in 2015, did make some recommendations. I should have sent that to both of you, resent it to you, Judy, and sent it along. That was part of the work that the students did, so that's the guidelines.
So there's been some work there to know.
Yeah, I will send you.
It's on the website.
Oh, it's on the.
It's on
Okay, that
it's on
is
the
on the
page-
website,
It's on
right.
the town rail trail website.
Great. So I have a couple of other shots from here, but I think,
That's probably good
we're
enough.
kind of getting
Yeah.
the,
I'm also
There-
wondering when you go to the
Mm.
conference, if there might be there might be funds available at the conference that we can apply
Or
for.
grants.
yeah,
They could
Yeah.
have grants.
that's
Good
good.
idea.
See if there's.
Good.
Yeah, those bottom ones where you can see the concrete rubble back there.
Oh, this.
Yeah, oh, yeah, that big concrete rubble, that's a pretty nasty little hill there, isn't it?
Yeah, this
Oh, yeah.
huge.
Do you want me to read this sentence?
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
Chris pulled it up, but and before you read it, the intent. Now, I'm remembering now, my neuron is firing. The intent from Hanson was to create a barrier. Even though it wasn't a fence, to keep people on the trail, which we know isn't really an issue, and who wants to go
Yeah.
explore that? But so, we were like, okay, that's no problem, because we also wanna screen that from the trail. So, but this is Chris will read what's actually an easement.
Thank you, Chris, for looking that up.
Schedule A, special conditions to trail easement. Trail elements to be installed by town. Owners of parcel has requested and town has agreed to provide and install a vegetative hedge along the northwesterly side of the trail as indicated in the below sketch. And town will install trail stop signs on each side of Pinckney Road for trail users and crosswalk hatching and pedestrian crossing signs for motorists on Pinckney Road. And then there's a sketch indicating the alignment of the hedge.
And I.
The
believe that
alignment of the
one-
hedge,
And I.
how many feet is it? Can you tell?
It's just the entirety of.
It's the entirety.
From the edge of the woods to Pinckney.
And 500 was
Oh.
what was listed, 500 feet was what was
Oh, okay.
listed as our wish to get to, in the Parks and Trails, in the
I
Parks and
see.
Trails request.
So an existing honeysuckle shrub hedge, even though I also hate them, meets the intent
Okay.
of this.
Uh-huh.
So I would say what we would want to do is fill in the gap.
Yes, and this is a gap that we identified. For some reason, this was disturbed. There are, in other sections, there's enough tall trees that you don't see that much, but this is the section of about 200 feet, which just happens to be where you can most clearly see the pile of rubble in the buildings. So that's why we picked
And the
it.
stop sign, the trail stop sign, will be installed when that Pinckney section is open.
Yeah.
The crosswalk hatching is there and the pedestrian crossing ahead is there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so-
The stop sign isn't there because that's part of our order
Yeah, right.
with our reg signs and things like that, but so we'll meet the other parts of this easement language. And right now, the crossing isn't open. We have
That's right.
the trail open on the other side.
Trail's not yet, so.
Yeah. So we could get away with the honeysuckles being there, but we want to, especially in this particular place, do this as a sort of kind of a pilot project.
Yeah.
So thank you guys for your
So,
work on this.
Next step would be to go to the site and see what's there,
Mhm.
what's growing there. That's native that we would want to
Yeah.
keep.
On a
or-
day when it's not pouring. We did identify
We had a nice
some, but,
lunch at,
you know.
what do you call it, at Brewers.
Yours, yeah.
Yeah,
But see what's there and, look at the soils a little bit. I mean, you're good at looking at them and knowing what's there, but I don't know that I could.
We'll bring a shovel.
Yeah,
That's how most people do it.
dig below.
And then we'll see
Things
what,
like
but
this.
their expertise we'll need. Do you know if the town has a grapple? One of those great
Weed
machines
wrench.
that
Yes.
just holds on to a tree and goes.
Not that, no, but if there's a pile of brush that needs to be picked up and moved, they can do that.
Yeah,
Oh, but not something that can grasp a honeysuckle bush and pull it up by the roots.
They have one that can mow it flat down to the ground.
That's not what we want. It'll just pop
No.
right back. I have a stump mower.
There was not, on this
Wow.
particular section that we chose, it kind of
mean,
mounts. There weren't
Yes.
that many. There wasn't that much honeysuckle on.
No,
this
not right
particular
here. I
section
mean,
we
just in
chose.
general, in
Yeah.
general, this project is gonna entail trying to get rid of a lot of
Yeah,
honeysuckle.
This little stump puller, manual stump puller might be just what you need for a few
a few little
things.
pieces. But
You're
let's just,
welcome to use it, you're welcome to have it.
What?
It's too heavy for me.
It'll be too heavy for me too.
Yeah, I know, but you'll have some volunteers, right?
That's
okay.
Young professionals.
Time is rapidly going, I promised the Levines that I would talk about their bench.
oh, good, okay, go for it.
Jenny Levine, who's Linda's daughter, and their 10-week-old baby
Mhm.
went down to Dryden Lake
Mhm.
along the Jim Shug Trail, because that's where they would like a bench. And they took some pictures, and I just sent them to you.
Yes, I just got them just before the meeting, yeah.
I just did it during the meeting so that you would have them and you could
Oh,
find them.
okay.
But maybe you could put up one or two which show the location off the trail with a view of the, what I'm interested in is whether this whole committee needs to determine where benches are going to go, or if that should be something, I mean, I used to talk about it with Bob.
Yeah.
And Bob would say here, here, here,
Yeah,
and then, fine, that one, he'd say, yeah, sure. So I don't know if I need to bring this up with the whole committee, the location of a bench.
yeah, that's just a great question. I think Bob did handle those kinds of things, and the only thing, I mean, there might be some consideration that other people would bring here, but I
Mhm.
don't.
I mean, because it's Dryden Lake, which is a prime area, and they said there's no bench that's facing the lake as a, with a view. You'd say go for it?
Yeah.
You get
Can
it
you,
for now. Can you think of a process, any?
Does
Tom, what do
DEP
you think?
need to be involved?
No.
No, it's our property.
Is the entire lake area?
No, this is right on the Shug Trail.
It's right on the
It's right
Shug
on the
Trail
Shug
that the
Trail.
town owns,
What
yeah.
Considerations with
The
DPW.
only
Yeah, that,
to
Maintenance
check
and erosion.
DPW.
that
yeah,
would be the, but
I have the coordinates.
I would say that that's kind of like the last thing. It's like, whatever the internal process is, just like almost everything that we do, it's like, okay. That sounds good, pending making sure that it works for the
Right.
DPW.
Yeah.
So, and I'm happy to do that.
Okay.
I don't wanna speak in terms of like the how
Do you wanna show? just
we as an organization
Let me see. if I can
determine this
get
for
that up.
process.
I
I mean,
thought
one thing I thought of is that if we did want the whole group to be able to have a say in it, we could either see a map with a pinpoint of where it's gonna be, or we could see a map with a pinpoint and then a picture of that area. And then in a meeting, we just vote, yeah, that's a good place, or that's not a good place. And I just can't think that there'd be any case where we would say, no, don't put a bench there, but
Yeah.
there might be cases where we would say, if you put a bench there, you'll get more mosquitoes, or I don't know.
That's their problem.
That's their problem, yeah.
Mhm.
I don't see a reason for us.
Explanation.
Yeah,
everybody
I
knows
think
where the
reporting
bench
is
and you
fine. I
let
don't think we
people
need to
know.
vote on it.
Okay, good. Yeah, I agree. So if the Levines, pick a site and you want to run it by DPW, I'm sorry, I'm just not able to.
It would be helpful to have a map with a pin for sharing with Rick.
So I'm gonna just pass my phone around. That's Linda Levine with her arms stretched where she wants the bench,
There you go.
So I have
looking out on the lake.
Okay, I have 4 different photos are they all on the same spot?
Yes,
Oh,
all in the
okay.
same spot.
Okay.
Is there a typical of how
What's
far,
happening?
I was just trying to figure out exactly where they were.
is there a typical of how far off the trail the benches have been?
I think
I guess it's trying to give me that.
It's right on the trail.
Yeah.
It
This
doesn't
one
mean
has its back to the trail looking at the lake.
I mean, typically they face into the trail, but it does make more sense to turn around. There's only one on the trail I know that turns around, and that's the one that looks over to where Bruno got married.
Yes, I was thinking the exact same one and that,
Skyville.
and that reference, yeah.
They're all
and-
four there if you wanna.
That's,
Okay,
that looks great.
Oh, that looks good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to have a
Okay,
bench
good.
Looking towards the lake.
So the back
Something
that you
bench
wanna
would be
look
towards
at.
trail.
I
Right on
think
the
that's what
trail.
you'd want to look at,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the only thing, I think it's a good question, is there any circumstance in which it would be put in a way that obstructs people coming through? We just want to make sure
It's
that
off the
there's
trail.
enough room, yeah.
It could
Yeah,
go-
cause there's one at one end of the lake and one at the other end of the lake, there's none in the middle.
Yeah.
And the one at the far end of the lake faces the lake, but you're past the lake. The other one faces away from the lake.
My question on its proximity to the trail was more like. Do we have a standard that it's 4 feet off the trail as opposed to somebody saying, I'd like 120 feet off the trail?
Oh.
And then you need a trail to get to the bench
Right.
that we don't really.
But then it's not on our.
Cause if you're,
It could be within the 33-foot right of way though,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, this is about, what, would you say 5 feet?
Closer to 10 maybe.
Is it? Oh, okay.
so they would like to bench where she's standing.
Right where she's standing is what she's referring.
They've been only like 1 or 2 feet off the trail because.
Yeah.
the question gets to, how do you get to the bench? Is somebody gonna like?
Have to
somebody
make
drag
the trail to the
path?
trail.
Right, well, that's why I ask it, because Linda's.
Where that is, yeah, it definitely would need to be cleared.
Seems like they
It is clear.
But let's take.
The vegetation,
Yeah. Right now it's clear. I mean, there's no. It's
You
grassy.
think it?
So the
Somebody know
other,
it?
the other one, well, so if you put a bench there, it makes it harder to mow. This is why we'll talk to
Okay.
Rick about it.
Okay,
But also, it's open to the view shed, it's open to Dryden Lake now, but what about 10 or 20 years
Yeah,
from
that's
now?
gonna
Is
grow
there-
up for sure.
Is there an expectation that DPW is now
Mm.
maintaining the view shed of the view from the bench to the lake, which isn't really what
Mm.
what the rail trail is about. So,
I sort of feel like the benches should always be sort of a set distance away from the trail, which is like 1 or 2 feet. Cause they're meant, I thought primarily the benches were meant for people to rest their weary bones on the trail.
Look at the view.
It could go on the other side of the trail, looking towards that view. It'd be further away from it, which is
Yeah.
not what she wants, but.
Yeah,
But then
whether
they
or not
looking
you
at
can
all
actually
vegetation.
see.
Your view would be obstructed by all those.
That's where
hundreds
the
of people
person
in the
taking the picture is, isn't it? Where was the person standing taking the picture?
On
On the
the trail.
lake side of the trail.
Okay, yeah, so that other 10 feet back, would that make a big difference in what you see?
Probably. I don't know.
Yeah.
so what are the
So
considerations?
let's just talk to Rick, and the considerations are how far off it is and whether we're then obliged to keep that
Well,
open.
I think we tell her, no, but we do not. That's not in our
Okay.
mandate to maintain a view shed.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
to make her aware that it could grow up, and if it does, then it grows up, yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, a family might wanna get permission to maintain it
Come up with the
themselves.
clippers.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And are we comfortable with having benches placed random distances from the trail?
I have some dad would be actually looking at the wetland area, the wood gut.
If they're gonna give us money, yes, I'm comfortable with them, so.
Actually, they want another bench.
It's worth discussing, and I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of
so
understand.
they want two,
Yeah, I don't want.
There's another bench, another area in an unbenched area, which is between Game Farm and Stevenson. And she's given me a map location for that one.
do we have,
Oh, that's a good question.
do we have permission from the DC for benches?
yeah.
Is there?
There we have to ask for, I don't believe we
Okay.
have permission from
Right.
EDC to do benches
Right.
along that
Okay,
section.
so that'll be more.
There's one there
complicated.
already, there is one.
There is
Yeah.
Right
There's
next to one of the
next to
bridges.
In between the two bridges, there's,
No, not between the two bridges, but next to us.
Adjacent to one of the bridges, there is a bench.
Yeah,
On DEC property.
Did that, okay.
Really?
But that was installed as the.
Yeah, it's got a memorial plaque, I forget, it was a.
So once again, we have to go back and look at the
Close to-
disease.
You'll get a map with all of the benches marked.
Yeah.
Oh,
But the trouble is, I've never done the Jim Shug Trail.
Yeah.
Oh,
they
Because I
were-
don't have.
People were
the
asking
satellite
for
view.
it on Saturday and Sunday.
they used your satellite view, I think, here. Or a satellite view. This is the Game Farm Road to Stevenson. And they've marked where they would like the bench. And unless we have DEC objections or,
I think we always have to ask.
Yeah.
Yeah.
good.
Yeah,
okay,
maybe that's.
all right,
So that's step one.
that's step
Okay.
1, and step 2 is. DPW.
You're gonna talk to them soon, aren't you?
Yeah,
Oh, I know where that is.
it wasn't on my, it's on my to-do list, but not the highest thing.
Okay. This is good then, because now.
Right above where the
Yeah,
beaver.
good.
the
I also
beaver-
thought.
There's a small
that
beaver
quarter
dam.
mile marker that's.
Quarter mile, yeah,
Yeah.
that's on my list. for
And the
sure.
other thing that I needed to talk about was language or soliciting.
Okay.
We're soliciting benches.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Yeah,
You were going to talk
donations.
with.
I have not talked with.
Then let's do that
town
next time.
attorney. Okay,
Okay, and I'll get in touch with you. I rewrote something.
oh, good.
But it's very simple, you know, and I can introduce it next time. This is what language can we use
Whoops.
when
Then
suggesting to
that's-
people
I
that
see.
they might want to invest in a bench or donate for a
How
bench.
could you
It
go?
can't be solicitation.
Yeah, right,
That's all. So
yeah,
after you talk to,
okay. And the best thing we decided was to just have somebody who is not a member of the task force providing that information,
Right.
so.
that's why having Linda go around. Had Kendall saying, I just put 2 benches in. We'd like to have.
That's great.
So
Okay.
I also want to kind of push into the forefront the bench. I've paid up for my bench. And my bench for my husband Art, who passed away, and Chris Clausen, I think you mentioned his name.
Mhm.
He and Art were very close friends because they were both
So the.
village justices, and
Yeah.
he was telling me for a while, just tell me where you want it, tell me where you want it. So, but I don't know exactly, you know, who do I go to? We
Well, he
saw
said that-
Leah, and I think, I don't know how much of the easement that we have goes out onto Leah's property, but she's already said, yeah, that's fine, I'd love to see a bench put there. So, you know, that's kind of falling in place there, but I just not sure
Informal.
who,
I don't know where
who's
you are,
gonna,
but you can show me.
who's gonna make this, you know, who do I go to make it happen?
It sounds like DC is the next step.
Well, if you're already talking with Chris, I mean.
I know, first it was the village who was, you know, interested in doing it, and then they decided they're just gonna name the town hall after him, so. It's like that leaves, and I said, well, I want the bench, you know, to be here, that was a special spot for us.
you were talking in that little notch,
The little nut,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly, so it's sort of. you
that's
know,
only like 5 or 6 feet off the
a
trail.
little bit off the
yeah.
trail, but it would not be facing the trail, it would be.
Right, you're facing
south,
into the,
Which I think is the
yeah,
more interesting thing, because that's where everybody stops to look,
right.
so
So aren't we at the DEC stage then?
it's not DEC property at all.
No,
This-
no, I'm not DC, I'm sorry. DPW.
DPW,
Right, well, Rose was just saying that she's already been talking with Chris
Oh,
at
DC. Oh,
DPW.
Chris is DPW.
And so if Chris is okay with it, then
Then
Rick is
we're good
okay
to
with
go.
it, then I
Yeah.
shouldn't be an issue.
let
I
those
think we
guys
should
go.
just say that communication link has been made.
Right.
You could
Okay.
go ahead and work with him. If he's,
Okay,
you got the
great.
deputy superintendent, you got it.
Yeah.
Covered.
Okay.
DPW have all of our extra benches that were ordered?
There's only
Yes.
2.
There's not a
Only
lot
2
left.
I thought there was only 2.
Oh.
But they would know how to
Yes.
order more, right?
No, Bob handled the order.
I know he did.
Yeah, even Gwen would know.
Name of the company, I think I have it somewhere, but then we
Roundabout.
have it engraved at some place in Dryden that was opposite the dollar store that isn't there anymore.
Yeah, the engravers are no longer in business. I do remember that.
Maybe we could park this at a future agenda
Yeah.
item for, because it's good that you brought it up, but a future agenda item for the project management team, and we can talk
Good.
about
And another thing,
future
The-
benches.
future benches is what are the guidelines and parameters for plaques?
Yeah.
That we need to tell people. They've asked me,
Mm.
you know, are there any what can we put on a plaque? How much? I think it would probably be just how many words or what the space is.
I think what the space is, yeah.
Okay.
Cause I think they just cover one flat, like these big.
They cover one
They
slab.
just have, they're not.
So the measurements
measurements.
and type of wording,
And I
how many words,
probably
probably.
have that in file somewhere.
I'm sorry, what?
Most of us have that information.
Yeah, and I could find it in his files, I bet you.
Mhm.
Yes, I have all his, I
Oh my
have all his
gosh.
files.
Okay, well, I'll write to you and
Okay,
ask you to,
I'll,
to
I'll
to
find.
find that. You have so much to do. Okay.
I get, but I feel very lucky to have access to all
Mhm.
those files that Bob did.
Mhm.
So under Judy's committee work, we had tiny forests, we had benches.
Let's
and
call it mini forest.
Mini forest, okay, yeah,
Yeah.
that, you prefer mini forest,
Would
okay,
you?
good.
Yeah, I like.
Good, mini better, okay, good. Benches and donations, so all of those things will track for coming back again. The only other item on the agenda, I've asked a couple of times to think about what happens if I'm not able to run meetings, and I asked Todd if he would be willing to run a meeting. I don't think we necessarily, upon reflection, I don't think we necessarily need a vice chair person for this group. I think it would be valuable to have a backup person to run a meeting if I'm sick or traveling or whatever. I know I'm gonna be away in September. I wrote to Todd. Todd said yes for running a meeting when I'm away, but not necessarily being there and having any other officer responsibilities, but that works for me. I think Tony encouraged me to just like really think about what you need and who you want to work with and who could do that. And so I spent some time reflecting on that in the last couple of weeks, and I think that will work. I think just if you're willing to run a meeting, there's nothing in our write-up that says we have to have officers. We don't have a treasurer, for example. We don't have a vice chair written in, so I think that would work, and we don't really need any other formal action except you're saying yes.
Yes. So, I just need to know how to get in the building, because
Okay, yeah.
that's something I don't have.
And setting up this meeting, I would want it, before I go away, I'd want to show you how to get in the building. I have to go to town hall and pick up a key, usually the day of the meeting, and then put it in the return slot at the end of the day. So that's kind of how that's done. And gosh, you guys now.
The doors to you, like,
I open the door and I
Yep.
secure it in a way that allows it to keep on opening, and then I close that down at the end of the day. Yeah. And then you guys know how to set up these meetings now in the hybrid kind of way, but almost it would be good to walk you through what you're doing on your computer and what you're doing on that computer, but it's doable. So.
Right.
Can I ask one more? Who should go to DPW and ask Rick about the sighting? Shall I do that? Shall I be responsible for that?
All I need is a map with a point and the details. What I'll do is I'll email it, and then I'll probably follow up a few days later and call him.
Okay. Is coordinates enough?
Yeah, I can make a Google map from coordinates and just send that to him.
Okay, good.
Great,
And those photographs I could send to you.
Yep.
Okay.
good, okay. Whew. All right, 9:04. Thank you, everybody. Any last comments before we adjourn?
Confirming the next meeting.
Oh, our next meeting, it says at the bottom of our agenda is July 21st at 7 p.m. It will also be in person here, and for those who can't attend, we'll send a link. Okay. Well, thanks for hanging in there with us this whole time, Dan.
You betcha.
Thank you, everybody, for being here in person.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thanks, Dan.
Now I've got so many